We're also now going to hear from Clinton Bienduri. Clinton is a DFAS officer who has been gathering and incorporating traditional and cultural knowledge about fire into the products that they are producing at the BCOE. Clifton speaks 5 Aboriginal languages, I'm struggling to speak one, and has 47 years of cultural experience in Aboriginal law. His work, Clifton is assisting the BCOE to develop culturally appropriate strategies that build relationships with Aboriginal people and the wider community generally. As a cultural fire officer at BCOE, he is going to speak to us today on the cultural fire program at the Bushfire Centre of Excellence. Clifton is going to be assisted in his presentation by Zach Merritt and Jeremy Wright, who are both trainees at the Centre of Excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Clifton, Zach and Jeremy.
Hello, hello. Get the boys out. I'll show you guys. Come here. This is Zach and Jeremy. They're the trainees. I'll bring them out later. Yeah, just leave it there. Good. I got the clicker there. What a wonderful day. It's been brilliant today. Just mingling with everyone and seeing what different people are doing, different organisations. Obviously, good intro too, by the way. Thank you. Clifton Bienduri is my name, and I'm with the Bushfire Centre of Excellence, obviously traditional and cultural fire officer. About me, I grew up in the desert, sort of right on the edge of the Great Sandy Desert, on the top end of the Canning Stock Route. Anyone here been to the Canning Stock Route? Been on the Canning Stock Route? Way up north? Okay, cool. Oh, one. That's good too. So I grew up way out in the sticks. I was one of those School of the Air kids in the middle of nowhere in a tin shed, or we started off with a bough shed. It was made out of spinifex and timber. And I was one of those kids doing, out there. My first experience in education was School of the Air, and my teacher was down at Perth. And I don't know if anyone here, I guess most of you guys did CB radio over, that kind of thing. It was very, very, and I'm going to touch on why I'm introducing myself this way, because growing up in the desert, I didn't realise back then what was happening. I was very much immersed in law and culture and traditional learnings, I guess. I'd go out there and my dad and my mum and all my family, I had horses and that kind of thing. We'd go out hunting, and the boys, we'd go track animals. We knew these little flower. If you didn't see water on the surface, we knew what flower that you could find in between the sand dunes. And if you dug under there about a metre or so and waited for a little bit, the water would come out. We'd stick spinifex in there and put eucalyptus leaves on top of it. We'd go out hunting, get goannas and snakes or whatever, come back to that spot and the water would come up. We'd just push the spinifex down, use it as a filter and lay on our tummies, and drink the water. Growing up in the desert where my dad's country was, there's 3 Aboriginal neighbouring languages. So there's Jaru, Kukoja, Wangojanga, 4, Walmadere. And in order to speak to my cousins, I needed to learn all 4 of those things, 4 of those languages. But my mum was a river country woman, and she came from Fitzroy Crossing. And same, there was 4 others, 5 over there. There's Nyigana, Guniandi, Bunoba. Walmadere was taken over there, but there was Nyigana, Bunoba, Guniandi, and Wangojunga as well. So I had to learn the other 3 as well. So there's 7 there that I needed to learn in order to have good communication with everyone. And obviously, growing up, I went through customs and law and that kind of thing, and you were taught the protocols of communicating and engaging with different people, elders, and all of that. And there was a process, I don't know, anyone here heard of the kinship system? No? Well, some of you, yeah. Well, the kinship system is very, very important in communicating and engaging in a culturally appropriate way with Aboriginal folks. There's a system down here, the Noongar system, but the system is spread right across Australia, right across. There's four in my system, four systems that sit there. There's Banaga, Burungu, Milanga, Garimara, and within those four there's totem groups as well. And each one has a different code to speak to each other and in order to communicate. And the more you communicated with each other, the more complex it became when you started to speak to different hierarchical not hierarchical, I guess, elders of knowledge as well, to make decisions quicker using that cultural protocol system. Bear with me. This is Kala Garijan. Obviously, Kala Garijan is Kala is fire. Garijan is knowledge. Bushfire Centre of Excellence. The local Bidjarab Noongar people would named it Kala Garijan. And that's where, and I'm guessing the boys and Beck kind of explained where that was, where that based. I want you to close your eyes for a second and imagine Australia before occupation, and maybe Western Australia, and maybe think of that for a second. But what we do have here, if you look at this, everybody's familiar with Kings Park, yeah? Oh, good. Obviously, one is taken with a drone. And back when the first ships came up the Swan River, they brought with them historians and record keepers, people who had to, write or describe the country. And many of them were artists. They had to, show what the country looked like and send it back to the Queen or whatever, so they could have a gander at what the new land looked like. And this one here was painted by one of those people. Same spot. Obviously, there were rules and regulations and different lands. Obviously, if you've been to Noongar sessions and things like that, there's a Wajak, Bibbulman, all different kind of groups, north and south of the river. And obviously, the further out you go, you'll find out there's Wallamiri, Guni, and Bunaba, and different other language groups out there as well. And those kinship system protocols run all the way through there. So I guess why I'm telling you this? Because when we do engage and make those initial conversations with Aboriginal groups out there, you've got to understand that there's a different sort of communication, engagement, and decision-making process happening within those Aboriginal groups. Yeah, it's nothing like. Look, I've done my research. I've looked out there and tried to figure out if there's others out there, and I've never seen them. It's so complex. It's so. But there was a system on this land making decisions to groups, and they were very, very important. It's still used today. It's very, for the billions and billions of dollars that get decided upon on Aboriginal affairs or whatever across the country, those decisions are made using traditional cultural methods. What's happened since obviously the occupation and things like that? We've become more stationary. I guess we built towns, now we've got cities, and those people who want a tree change, want to live out there, especially those areas that are risky, that have risk attached to them, and obviously a lot of the country out there haven't been managed or supported for a long time before after occupation, I guess. So we have to consider obviously, those people who are living in much more dense communities and townships and areas of risk. But obviously, these countries, communities and groups are living on traditional lands as well. And you heard Welcome to Country earlier on, and an elder from this area give a talk. Why did Aboriginal people use fire? Can anyone give me one thing? Why? Pardon? Practical reasons. Yeah. Okay, warm, making fire, cooking stuff on. Anybody? Anyone got another one? No. The other one was the spiritual. Now you got to imagine, some 60,000 years ago, a bunch of my countrymen sat around a fire, decided to create the kinship system and say, we need some order here. I'm going to create the system that's going to help us organize ourselves, that's going to help us figure out how to make these decisions. And the kinship system, having the Banaga, Burunga, Milanga, and Garimara systems in it, they realized that, maybe elder who's Jabalderi or Nabalderi or Jungore or Jabanaga is going to be the elder that holds the fire, that creates, makes those decisions. Depending on which area you are from, or even from the south, if you're a Crow or a white cockatoo, from those totems. So there was attachments. There was these links that really gave us specific sort of order and rule to be able to make a decision on managing country and deciding on how that's going to work. And it's done in a way that's very respectful of each other, because the kinship system, the titles, had a specific way, code to communicate with each other. One group could only communicate to, one title could only communicate to this title in a certain way. But she or he could not communicate in the same way that she did with this person, with another person. So it was the sense of, I guess, the respect system was placed within the kinship system process. And they bypassed that so you don't have to say any, good evening, how you do all the niceties and that kind of thing. They just said, no, we'll make a system where you can talk to someone in a way in a way that relates and which was respectful to you and them. Smoking country. Everybody has obviously been through some of that. The ecological reasons, environmental stuff. So you got to imagine, 60,000 years. Some learnings have happened there. Imagine you writing a journal every day from January 1st to December, the last day, 30th? Yeah. Anyways, my point is that you were writing a journal and you were taking note and recording the change of the seasons, what you felt like cold, maybe you needed to wear some, and the moon and what counting the moon's systems as well. And you were looking at the trees turning green into brown and then dry and then dying and seeing these animals come out specifically. There was a connection there, and you were doing this for a long, long time, a couple of thousands of years, and you were now creating songs and dances that would symbolize those times and ceremonies to give you an understanding of what's happening in and around you. So in songs, in songlines, all of this stuff was all, very much put in there. It was put in the artwork on the bodies, on the ground. There was a choreographed dance for that season. There was ceremony. There were songs that were written in order for those seasons to change. Obviously, like those old folklore songs in European countries as well. So they were set in, and over many years, keeping this method and teaching people over those many years, and keep making sure that we manage. We knew where the waterways were. We knew where the heat. Obviously, fire was a natural thing as well. We saw it happen naturally through the lightnings and stuff, but obviously creating fire as well. And managing how we are going to survive, eat tomorrow by making sure that our land moves animal in and around your property. So making small patch burns and all that kind of stuff. So caring for country. That's one of the phrases we're now using to describe that, that spiritual connection back to country. We now have a title. We now know how to communicate with each other and what codes to use. We now have been given songs and dance that tells us, at the second or third moon, something's going to happen. There's a baranga rain is going to fall or something like that, drop the tall grass. We know that that's going to happen, so it's already set. We've got a ceremony for it because there's a waterway somewhere, that has a song line attached to it. So there was that. Managing country and making sure that we use fire to be able to do that and move animals around in order to know that we can hunt there. We know that it's turkey season or goanna season or barramundi season, that kind of thing. So we light fires to attract those animals when they are in season so they can feed off other smaller animals to survive. I moved down here something years ago, no, longer than that. I used to live in Balingup, just down the road. Got away from family. Sheesh. They wouldn't come down here because it's too cold. And I loved it. But I still don't know how you Southerners do it, man. I'm still trying to acclimatise to this weather. But anyone here seen the Tyndale maps? It's an old tribal map. It describes where the language groups live, and this is just the southwest. I'm talking, the Tyndale map describes all of the language groups across Australia. In Western Australia, we've got about 30-something Aboriginal languages. I only speak 7 of them, but there's a lot more. And one of the biggest languages across the country is Creole. Dia ni wala lugana ledala dia ni ngani ba ngane nandora ngane nunga people ngane bo ngane country dia ni. That's Creole, spoken across Australia, one of the biggest Aboriginal languages in Australia. So Noongar country reaches up all the way up to Leeming and all the way down to Esperance, and you can see where we are. I think we're in Wadandi country now, yeah? But having to remember those kinship systems, remember those elders, remember those the code system that we need to communicate and engage with each other. Obviously, I work for the Bushfire Centre of Excellence, and I'm an Aboriginal person, therefore I have a skin name and I have a code in order to communicate and engage with countrymen. So I need to use that. I have to use that system in order to make those connections or engage with the community, because they have this decision-making process here that's quite difficult. That's quite time-consuming, but it's respectful. Yeah, it doesn't create feuds and fights and arguments or dysfunction. Because if you use it correctly, everything will work with plan. So I tell people, folks, if they are going out to the community, to realise that there's a process there that countrymen, Aboriginal people need to use, and it takes that long. So if you're a project officer saying, "Oh, we got so much money, we got a whole year of this," and you're at phase 1 now, and you're thinking, "Okay, we can engage with the community now," but you're waiting. You've engaged with the community, and you're still waiting for them to come back with an answer. And it's getting close to the due date of phase 1, and you're going, "Oh, sheesh, well, I can't get this thing happening. My boss is giving me a hard time. I'm in phase 1. I can't get this thing to happen." The thing is, you probably should have gone and had that conversation with your groups in the first place and understood that there's a system here that needs to be dealt with first, and maybe include it into the development of that project and add it into phase one so that you don't bust out your budget and times and all that kind of stuff. And they all do it. Everybody uses this cultural communication and engagement process, which is entwined in the kinship system. Anyone seen the maps of cultural maps before? Cool. Obviously, we've got one up in the Yawuru country, one up Broome, and other one down here in Noongar country. You can see where we are right now. We're in October, obviously, Camberang in Noongar country. You can tell that it's longer dry periods and some rain. I don't know what the weather's doing now, but obviously up in Yawuru country or Kimberley country, it's hot. Elijah. By looking at these looking at this calendar, remember these guys have been now monitoring country. They know what's going to happen. They've sung this songs. They know the system. They now understand that at the third or fourth moon or whatever, at the 11th or 10th moon, they know that the grass is thing. They know that the curing is happening or whatever with the grass. They know that they need to put a fire to country to care for country, but they're using it for several reasons, not only for ecological, but also spiritual. They've added a spiritual connection to it with song and dance. And they're now using it for also food as well, which is entwined into that whole process of it being practical and it being spiritual and it being ecological in all of this stuff. So they've now made it seem like it's the way of life. So you now have to follow this process where you're constantly not only wanting to feed yourself because you want animals to stay within your country and you know where they grow or where certain fruit and veg grow and where animals roam, and now you know where to go and hunt because you've cared for country, you've done the right thing, you've done the burning, you've enhanced regrowth and all that kind of stuff for the animals to move around. What we've come up with, obviously, I've talked about the kinship. We now know that there's a kinship system. We now know that there's language groups. We now know that there's people of the land who TOs that we need to speak to and speak to in a very cultural way in order for us to do it right and respectfully. So we came up with, right people, right time, right way. In order to do all of this stuff, we developed this communication and engagement process where we're now using the kinship system as a means to make these engagement and be respectful of those cultures and language groups across the country. And we do this now by applying, obviously, fire in the right way, using those methods of now, they can burn here, and a family group does it. And the way that they've been doing it, men light the fires and the women, collect the animals that might run out of the... I got asked once, what do they do about the bushfires, though? And my answer was quite simple. We sorted that out in the first 1,000 years, and the other 60,000 we kind of were maintaining it by then. It was low, so we could just, So you're creating mosaic burns. You're making sure that your country has animals constantly there so that you feel yourself. But also you're applying spiritual locations that are important to you and your family group, because an elder, brought you and your family there, and therefore stood at this waterway. Therefore, we pay respects to that elder through song and dance, and now use fire in that whole process by creating mosaic burns all over our country and making sure that we're caring for our spiritual connections that are out there. Down here, they used obviously the fire tools. One of them was the the bit of the flower on top of the grass tree. So those are the only two sticks that you could use to rub together to create fire. And the first ever drip torch, the spear grass, the grass tree prongs or skirt, I guess, that was used. It does pretty much the same thing. It stays alight for a little bit because there's a bit of oil in there. So they would use this. But the women would use the peppy tree. Like, this one's really dry now. It's been in my car, sorry. But they would put this, they would walk behind and put the fire out and direct it in certain ways and make sure that keep the fire controlled. The next thing I'm going to do is let you see a little quick video, a Dreamtime story from the Noongar people, or the Binjara people from the Noongar Nation, which is in Pinjarra. They've been really helpful with us with the Bushfire Centre of Excellence, and they provided this for a local elder there, Carrie Ann Caring, who's been really instrumental in the way that we've designed the Bushfire Centre of Excellence, but also in being able to just be that person we can go to in order to make those cultural decisions in the right way. This video is obviously she wrote it, directed it, and the producer Naomi Ashcroft. I didn't get to the camera. That's all right.
Let me tell you how fire come to be from Kura, long time ago. Our stories start in the Nyidiyang times, the icy cold times, because that's how long us Noongars have been here. In those times, nobody had fire, except Mika, the moon. And he kept it in his gung, his tail. And he wouldn't share it with the Noongar. So one night, Mika's cousins, Wata and Quattlebar, Wata was the pigeon, Quattlebar his conch, the sparrowhawk, decided to steal his fire and give it to the Noongars. But when they went to follow Mika, Wata got sick and he started to cry. And Quattlebar, his conch, he sat beside him all day, flapping his wings and singing. And he kept on singing until Wata got better. That night, Mika woke up real cold and realized that Wata and Quattlebar had stolen his fire. And they put the fire in the walyup and other trees. Mika tried to get the fire back, but Wata and Quattlebar were too fast and he couldn't catch them. And all the other birds saw Wata and Quattlebar put the fire in the walyup and the other trees. And they cried out, "Quaba!" for what they had done. The Noongars all sung songs of praise to their murt, their relatives, Wata and Quelba, and they picked up their fire sticks, waving them around, singing and dancing in their gladness. And Wallich the eagle saw this, and he cried out, Nicha, Quart, Quaba, Williaman! My heart is glad to see the smoke. And when Mika saw the smoke, he called out to his cousins, Give me back my fire! But Wata wouldn't give him back his fire. Mika wanted his fire back so bad that he called on Wardan, the sea, to flood the land and put out the fire. But Wata was too bullish, clever, and he kept the fire high up in the walyup, in the fire stick, where the sea couldn't touch it. And then the Nyungas had warmth, and the Karla to cook their meat. And Mika the Moon had no more fire after that, after Quelba and Wata stole the fire from his gung, his tail. Now, if Mika hadn't been so greedy and refused to share the fire with the Nyungas, then he wouldn't be so cold today. Now all Quelba must cry out, Bibara! 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 whenever they fly over a mob of our people. And what are the pigeon? He sings, to remind the Nyungas that they were the ones who give them the fire and the fire sticks. Nyambewa.
So that's the dreaming story. You can see the messages in there, the information that was set in dance and song, and there was, they included the real some practical stuff in there that the Aboriginal people needed in song and dance. Therefore, they could teach their kids and others about the country and what resources to use from the land in order to make fire. Therefore, the messaging all the way through that, even in the painting and the choreography and all of that. So, having this system set in song, dance, communicating, now giving you understanding of how we use fire and how we use it as a tool by means of caring for country and doing those patchwork burns has really given us some really good head start, I guess. Using fire today. There's ranges all the way across the country and in Western Australia in particular, and there's planned burnings being used up north. One of the big difference with cultural burning, though, in the landscape of Australia, and you can understand why the southern part of Australia hasn't really maintained that culture. You know, I shouldn't say they lost everything, because they certainly did not. What they have done is they've still maintained some of it, but only a select few have that knowledge. but it went, and because it was outlawed for Aboriginal people to do that kind of thing, and rules came in place, and more towns growing, people getting properties, it stopped them from doing all of those cultural burns, and obviously, and it left the landscape. It wasn't used in the landscape to actually use fire, so that was lost. Not lost, but it was laying dormant there, and in our songs and dances in the southern part of Australia. But the big difference with the northern part of Australia, they didn't stop doing cultural burning. They kept doing it. They just incorporated technology into it. Now they're doing their own aerial burning. Now they're doing their own GIS. They're doing their own mapping, the planning, and they're doing the burns. It's crazy how far ahead. I'd say they'd be at least 20 years ahead of the southern part of Australia when it comes to burning out there. And obviously I grew up in the bush as well, so my history, the youngest I can ever remember of doing traditional burn, I reckon about 9 years old. For hunting, for gathering food, for restorative burning, so I can bring back different vegetables and yams and bush tomato and bush nuts and all that kind of stuff. We had to be involved in all of that because it meant that my family, were able to get some feed, get something to eat. How can you help? You can help by telling this story. And I reckon there's about a good 100 people here today. And by average, I reckon you guys would have at least 100 Facebook friends. Do the math, all right? Let everybody know about this and know what you've heard. And I reckon, what's that? There's close to 3 million people in the state. I reckon we could do it in a couple of hours. Get them all. If you use that method, because use that calculation. But getting it out there. We've got local Noongar people. One of my good friends, and I look up to him respectfully, and maybe some of you have heard of him. Oral Maguire has a little block just out of York there, and he took us out there for traditional cultural burning, and other places down at Zach and Wayne Webb down at Margaret River. Those boys, these guys are leading the way down south here, and I can highly recommend that if you are need some advice, these guys are the elders. I've got a lot of respect for them. A lot of respect for Oral. He's not only been a mentor, he's just an all-around good guy. Until he turns on you, no. But he's a genuine guy. Zach here is down at Underlup, and I went to one of their cultural burns down there in Margaret River, and they had everybody down there, and it was great to have that cultural, input from the boys down there. And we're trying to get network throughout the state. Obviously, we're going down to Esperance to Djulirrup and those people as well. The Noongar people down there. But we'd like you to be our storytellers, to create those messages out there so that we can create a value system that can go for the next 60,000 years. How about that? That'd be a good journey. I'd be on that. Right now we're building a program. We've got a trainee program as well. We're teaching our young. We've had 3 trainees come through our system. 2 of them is right here right now. Unfortunately, Zach didn't bring his mullet with him this time, but he's here to tell you a little bit about what we do in the Bushfire Centre of Excellence.
Hello. Hi. So my name is Zach Merritt. As Cliff introduced me. About myself. So I'm a Tinmar man from Upper Gascoyne. So if you were to go Gascoyne Junction, go another 5, 6 or so hours inland from there. That's where I'm from, middle of nowhere. I was up there recently, there's still nothing. So that's about me. About my language is actually classed as a critically endangered language. There's only probably 1 or 2 elders that can actually speak my language. So for me personally, being with the Bushfire Centre of Excellence and Clifton in the Cultural Fire Program, that's really encouraged me and wanted me to start getting back on country a bit more, start learning the language. I don't want to lose the language. I don't want to let it die. So that's really motivated me to do that. Also, just working alongside Clifton, just not even about culture, about myself. He's really taught me a lot. And then on the cultural side, going out with Clifton, meeting a lot of Indigenous groups, being on country, a lot of different countries, and meeting the elders and traditional owners out there, and being a part of cultural burns and things like that. That's really given me a wealth of knowledge now, and knowledge that now I can take back up onto my country up north, and not only teach the younger generation on how to look after country, but also my elders as well, on ways we can look after country. So for me personally, that's been a really big enjoyment for me, being at the Bushfire Centre of Excellence. And also the training we've gotten. My first ever emergency response was to Wirraloo. I assisted there. For me personally, that was a real big eye-opener, being my first time. And seeing what goes on there and all the work that gets put in was a real big eye-opener for me. So it's been really great for me. That's about it for me. I'll pass you on to Jeremy, the other trainee, and he'll tell you about himself. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jeremy Wright and I'm a Binjarab Noongar from the Peel region. I previously lived in Perth, but I moved down to Aruna about a couple of years before the Aruna and Yarloop fires happened. But having the opportunity to work with the Bushfire Centre of Excellence, and which is one of the outcomes of the fires, it's been a great privilege, and it's been a great experience, which has awarded us with a cert free in government, which is always great. I'm currently working in the training team at the BSOE, but recently I've been given the opportunity to go out and work on some prescribed burns and get out and get some real good hands-on experience. But right now, I've also been given the opportunity to go work with Zach and Cliff in the Cultural Fire team. It's been really good. I'm really excited to see what they can offer in the future, and see if I can bring back some knowledge into my local community, especially the Indigenous. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Zach and Jeremy. I got songs, and all of that kind of thing are very, very important. And for traditional people in Wallumaderi, anyway, in my country, there's always a traditional song for the area. And I'd like to maybe sing that song to you today. But before I do that, just for fun of it, I want to do a selfie with you guys. Put your hands up. Come on. Hey! There you go. Just to let people know that I actually spoke to you guys. I'll show it to the boss when I go back. But traditional fire song. I performed with Hugh Jackman for many years, for like 15 years, and I went on tour with him. And this song was based around coming back to the fireplace and not losing your way. Although you may journey too far off, but you could always find your back to the fire where the story is true, where your true north is. And yeah. I know Jangamau Wangada Jalinya Yang Tangurakate Nyundugarau Yuntu grown, they get yan down, they get yan down, they get yan down. Boo! Boo! Thank you all for having us. Cheers. Questions?
Are there any questions, please?
Forgot about that.
How do you follow that?
Everybody just want to go to the pub and get it over and done with. They just want beers. Yes, sir. Oh, you first. And then you second, yeah. You first. Sir. Absolutely, sir. Well, yeah. Look, we can't. We certainly cannot have the traditional sort of purist, traditional burns anymore. It's just impossible. There's been 200 years of growth now, and it's just hard to maintain it. Like I said, we took care of it the first 1,000 years, and then the other, 64,000 years or whatever. We just kept it down. And maintained it. So doing that, I guess, across the landscape right now, it's going to be really difficult to do a traditional, cultural burn. But, we've got some cool stuff as well now, like helicopters. Up north, they're doing some good stuff out there. That's not traditional blowtorch because they're using good tech now to do those things. Although they've been maintaining that traditional sense, they're just using, blowtorch, not blowtorches, the drip torches now. And she's no blowtorch. I didn't say it. Anyway, and that kind of thing, which is awesome. So, yeah. But the key right now to maintain some form of cultural protocol, that kinship system, that communication and engagement protocol, that's the thing that we need to use now in order to start being, having those cultural advices from those elders and people like that to give us some understanding of, and giving them at least some. Empowering them with the fact that they're now being included in those decision making, because that gives them empowerment as well to be able to make those be involved in those decision making, maybe be a part of it, maybe help you along. I mean, Zach Webb and Oral Maguire are doing that right now. It's brilliant. Thank you. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry, mate. Yeah. My fault. Sorry, mate.
Kaya.
I'm well, but I'm learning Noongar as well, so it's all good.
We heard a lot today about the impacts of climate change and sort of severity and frequency of fires. How has that impacted the use of cultural fire techniques with sort of like those changes?
Well, there's many stories across the country, and I grew up in a very traditional Aboriginal family, obviously, and growing up and having those things. When we talk about changes environmentally, we're talking about we're including cows, sheep, we're including fences, we're including laws that apply now within the legislation. So when we're talking about, from my context, when we're talking about traditional culture and trying to bring that back because of climate change, well, there's an environmental change that happened with that brought that about as well. So, and those things make it difficult to do traditional burning. So we now have to, meet with local government, Craig, people like that to now have these conversations within these areas so that we can develop some networks and build a team. I think it's LEMP, is it? Sorry, LEMP meetings, involve them in those LEMC meetings. Invite your local traditional elders into those meetings and talk about emergency management of country. And and generally in those meetings you have your representatives who do care about the environment as well. So have those conversations. We need to be doing that. And I think what's very important is that we need to include Aboriginal people in those conversations, because we just don't. And we try. I mean, we're doing it with Bushfire Centre of Excellence, but by and large, I think across the state, not just in emergency, we just don't include them. So I think, and I urge everyone to go out there, find your local elder, get to know that person, get to know them, get to know her, get to know him, figure out who he is. But like I was telling Craig and up there. There'll be some crazies who think that they're the elders, But, you've got to really do your research. You've got to find out who they are, I know. I've had them come to me. So, yeah, do due diligence. Cheers, sir. Thank you. Anybody else?
Are there any online questions, Melissa? Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for these gentlemen. Thank you.
Cheers.